All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Lewis. And today's topic, as you can see there on the screen, is called My America. So, why is this topic for this particular episode called My America? Well, it's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about when it comes to things going on in America. But the main thing and the main topic that really sparked my interest is something that I felt like I needed to talk about and share with people, just giving my opinion and thoughts on it, is this whole concept of how things are moving in America currently, right? From a standpoint of who the president is and the presidential actions and how things are moving around in the country and how people are responding to it and how people are expressing themselves when it comes to certain things within the country. So, on my last podcast, I talked about, the situation with, like certain mosques being able to broadcast their prayers and stuff like that out into that particular city or area. And the reason they were able to do that was due to them, kind of fighting against the noise ordinance that was preventing them from doing that originally. So I think in Minnesota is one of the locations, and I think in Patterson, New Jersey is another location where, they got a few mosques that were able to get this done. And to me, I'm like, I don't think that's cool because it seems like if you look at the way things are rolling and the climate and how things are shaping out, you can see that it's a lot of things going on within the country, and a lot of it seems like in America, American culture and stuff like that is being pushed to the side to cater to a lot of folks that are coming into America that are not from here. Obviously, a lot of people, the country was founded on immigration and stuff like that, right? So people that came here that wasn't originally from here, and then the country went to its whole thing. If you want to look at the history of the country, go ahead and do that. I'm not going to go down that spill. But if you look at it, a lot of it was, bringing cultures here, blending cultures and stuff like that. Now, everybody has their viewpoint on how that worked out and how that spun. But if you're looking at the general culture of America, right, it's about being acceptance for the most part of other people's things. And if you're a Christian, obviously that's a big thing, right? We don't judge people for what they're doing because obviously God is the ultimate judge. So we, give people that freedom to worship how they want, do the things that they want to do from a religious standpoint, and we kind of let it roll. Now, that being said, you've seen recently the shift and dynamic with a lot of stuff when it comes to immigration and things going on with ICE and people getting deported and how that whole thing is playing out. And then you also got the folks where you got certain things going on from like things being enforced that were already on the books, but now that they're being enforced, people are taking that as some kind of sign of, a racism thing or, some kind of injustice against a certain group of people. And if you look at it, I would say if you go into everything with an open mind and just look at how things are breaking down, you would see like if you actually do some digging and actually start peeling the onion back on a lot of these things and how stuff is perpetuated, especially by the media and things of that nature, you can see the difference in dynamic and how stuff is shaping out. Right. For example, I'll use, like I said, I started talking about at the beginning was the stuff with like the mosque being able to broadcast their prayer. Now, if I was to roll down the street into a Muslim neighborhood and I was broadcasting sermons or gospel music and stuff like that, it would turn into a thing. I'd probably get stopped if it was reported, and I get, there would be some kind of action taken in the sense of, hey, you're making people feel uncomfortable. They don't really want to hear this and all that things kind of that nature. And then people being sensitive to what they feel. But then if you look at interviews and stuff like that that have gone on with a lot of, and this is not a blanket, so anything I'm saying is my own opinion, but it's not a blanket statement to cast on a whole group of people. It's just certain individuals or certain groups within that particular group that have this mindset, right? So you'll see some where they talk about, like an Islamic law, how things are done, in most Muslim countries and things of that nature, how they want that here in America. And I'm like, it's America. Like, we have our rules and regulations for how stuff is done, how stuff is handled, and that's what it is. Now, if you come into the country, obviously they allow you to have that freedom because America is free, to allow people to, kind of still have their culture, still have their background and the things that they worship, and you get the freedom to do that. But it seems like there's been a shift recently where it's being overly pushed that a lot of stuff here in America is getting pushed to the side. American cultures, American viewpoints are getting pushed to the side to allow people to be able to fully express themselves while imposing on the things that we have here. And to me, if you're looking at things from that nature, I'm like, that's messed up. Like, I don't believe that's how things should go. Like if you're coming from a place where you're like, oh, this is how stuff is done there, this is what we want here, and it's like, well, why not just stay where you're at? And I know that's not a popular thing to say. People say that's kind of insensitive, but if you look at it, America is a melting pot of different cultures, which is what makes America great. If you think about it, right? You can be in one state. I'll use New Jersey for an example, because that's where I was born. Like in Jersey, you have like the city is pretty much encompassed, right? So people around it, different groups and cultures are mingled in with each other. But you also have sections of the city that is kind of like sectioned off, right? Like you might have a Puerto Rican group in one section of the city, a Dominican group in one section of the city, an Italian group in one section of the city. So like it's sectioned off, but in the same time, like it allows people to be able to have their space, they have their culture, stuff like that. And people can still mingle and interact with each other and still be able to do their own thing and still be able to blend. But it's not a thing where people are forcing their particular culture on other people. That's where the issue comes in at. Because you can tell me, somebody would tell me, okay, hey man, like look, like they're playing that because they're they have their prayers and stuff like that and whatever, and you have to be sensitive to what they have going on. It's like, okay, cool, but then why is it not it's not an even exchange? So even exchange would be, okay, you want me to respect your religious viewpoints, okay, cool, you respect mine. If that's going to be the case, okay, cool, then we rocking on the same boat. But if you're oppressing mine but want me to push yours, especially when the background of that particular culture is oppression and keeping people down, doing certain things, right? So it's like, somebody explain that to me and make that make sense. Like, how is that a fair thing going on? But then, like I said, they were the mosque and go broadcast their prayers and stuff like that. And it's like, what if I'm in an area and that might be offensive to me, to where the point it's offensive to me because I don't want to hear it. But it's okay for them to do that. But if it was flipped around on the other side, no, we have to be sensitive to them. We have to understand, how that makes them feel. And I'm like, how in the world is the country that we live in shifting from you pushing American culture to the side and pushing, allowing other people to push their particular culture or their particular religion in this case? I don't think that's fair and makes sense. That's one. Then you go from the shift of seeing a thing, and they were talking about like drivers, right? Obviously, commercial truck drivers. My father's a commercial truck driver, right? Been driving for years. So, like the ins and outs of most of the trucking, I have a good understanding of. Not an expert by any stretch of the imagination or any means, but my dad been doing it forever. So having conversations, things like that. So, like, you see the thing like recently where they talking about a lot of the commercial drivers not being able to speak English. And then you seeing the guides for it where it says, hey, the premise for this is, hey, they need to be able to speak it fluently, they need to be doing this and all this other stuff. And people are taking that like, oh man, that's a racist thing, man. Y'all trying to come at people, y'all trying to stuff. And it's like, no, if this is something that is already on the books and has been there, but previous administrations or previous, things in government, lessened the rules or made it a little bit easier for people to slip through the cracks and be able to get in and do stuff, how is that fair? If you stop somebody, that's call a spade in certain sections, certain states and stuff like that, because of how cultures are set up in those particular states, things are made to be easier for the majority. So if you're the majority in an area where a lot of folks in that area speak Spanish, a lot of the language stuff there is going to be Spanish. So then it's like it's a push for people in America to learn another language when the primary language in the particular country, in our country, is English. Now, the flip side to that would be, cool, there's nothing wrong with growing your culture. So learning a new language actually is better for a person, but it shouldn't be something that's forced upon because somebody else didn't take the initiative or didn't take the time to learn the language for the area that they're living in. And I say that, and saying that, I know people are gonna look at me and people are gonna be like, man, that's crude, that's messed up. Your mindset is I don't believe my mindset's out there. I'm pretty fair across the board. But my thing is, like, you're forcing me to learn something from a place that's not native to here to make other people comfortable, but at the same time, they're not assimilating into the area that they're coming to. So what I mean by that, if you go to any country outside of the USA, right? You go to pick a country. you go to move in over there, you try to get your, you want to move there and live there permanently. You have to assimilate to what their culture is. So whatever the primary language is for that particular country, that's what you have to learn. That's what you have to speak. Why? Because that is the primary language. They're not going to change and move stuff around to fit English because they don't primarily speak English. Now, obviously, if you travel the world and you go different spots like tourist places, stuff like that, like a lot of the language is English for the most part. But if you think about that, why isn't that the same thing in America? Like, why is it for people that's coming here, it's okay for you not to do that, but if you go anywhere else, this is what you have to do? And how is that fair? Because you come to America and it's like, okay, cool. Your primary language is Russian. So now it's pushed upon me for me to learn Russian because that's your native tongue. But the native tongue for where you're at is English. No matter where you go, if you travel the world or go anywhere outside of the U.S., you will see that if whatever the primary language is for that country, if you move into that country, that's what you need to learn. Or you move into a country, you have to assimilate to what that country's core piece is. Now, that doesn't mean that you disregard yourself or your core beliefs, your values, your culture, stuff like that, but you still have to assimilate into the country that you're living in. So when I look at this stuff, that's why I titled this My America, because I'm like, if you look at it like the way things are trending, the way things are going, America is not going to be America. People are like, what do you mean by that? If you look at it, you have so many different cultures and stuff like that, but it's not, like I said, and this is not a blanket statement on all people, but it's like you have different segments and groups from these particular cultures, and their mindset is not to assimilate, is to take over, or is to push what they want, push their beliefs on other people. And I'm like, that's not fair. Now, people might turn around and say, well, you tell people to assimilate to American culture. That's not fair either. It kind of is, because you're coming into America. It's kind of how that works. Like, you leaving the spot that you're at because for whatever reason you're leaving and moving to America, for whatever reason you're moving there, most of the time, the 9 times out of 10 is to seek the American dream, to seek the freedom, to seek the opportunity to be able to grow wealth and set yourself up and set your family up for, future generations and stuff like that. So how is it okay for you not to learn the language or the native tongue for the place that you're moving to, but then you oppose it upon that particular place to learn your piece? How's that fair? I don't think it's fair at all. That's that piece. Then let's move to the whole ICE issue. Now, like I said, I am no means a political pundit. I'm just going off of the stuff that I do and read and see, and the information that I'll pull. If you want to get good information, look at ground.com. It is a great source for news and information because it doesn't just look at one side, it looks at both sides. Actually, it looks at all sides, left to right, and what's going on in the middle. So if you want accurate information about the stuff that's going on, like I said, I would say use that site. It's a good site to look at and check out. I'm just saying, you can give it a whirl. Now, but if you're looking at, like, if you go through and you look at things like when stories are put out there about just things in general, about ICE going on and stuff like that, people take whatever the hot clickbait is, and that's what they run with. And it's like I talked about on a previous podcast before I went to doing the video piece. When I talk about a hive mindset, where in the country you have a hive mindset being like there's one thing and then everybody goes with that one thing. There is no rhyme, reason, no chase, no looking, no investigation, no people digging into what's going on or what they're seeing. They're just running with whatever's put out there, which I think is a bad and it's a dangerous thing to do because you lose individuality in that. If you're not forming your own thoughts, you're not coming up with your own thought processes about the stuff that's going on, you're losing out on a lot of things because you're just running with whatever's there. Like they had a story at one time where it was like, oh, ICE ran into this hospital to grab this guy, this innocent guy, this and third. And then you dig and get the extra information to find out they didn't run into the hospital. They stopped the person outside the hospital and the person ran into the hospital. So how are they running into a hospital randomly to grab someone when a person took off and ran to the hospital? You see, it's how stories are perpetuated and put out there. Then you got this girl from I think UCLA, valedictorian. She comes out and she says something. She says, like, how are you giving a commencement speech? And you're like, F this, and this is like, come on now. You couldn't articulate. You graduated from USC, you're valedictorian for I mean, you not USC, UCLA. You're a valedictorian for UCLA, and you cannot formulate your thoughts properly to be able to speak and speak intelligently without having to resort to cursing. And everybody just woo clapping and cheering. How does that make sense? She's saying people are being terrorized and they just run up randomly grabbing people, pulling information, look at the numbers. If there is a like that's not, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it hasn't happened, because there have been situations where it has happened. So that's not going to discount what the person's saying, but it's like at the same time, do the full research and get all the information. People are going off of clickbait and what people are putting out there about what they're doing and how they're moving. I was talking to somebody that's in the area where there is ICE, a lot of ICE action, to where the whole shift of things have changed in how they're moving and how stuff was going. It's a good and a bad for both. Now, if you're a person that's here, have your documentation, have your papers, have your stuff. If you're in this particular area, you kind of making out. Why? Because the folks that you were there competing for with a job, now fair, unfair, like I said, they're undocumented. So obviously they're undocumented, they're getting checked, and they're getting the boot. Just because they're getting the boot mainly because they're undocumented. And that's what people keep failing to realize. Like, people are like, well, this person being here for X, Y, and Z. I get that. But at the same time, it's like you have a whole bunch of people that's been here and that went through the steps, went through the long process, went through the rigorous process of getting their citizenship and getting stuff done legally. And then you have people, even the folks, and I think it's messed up. I feel bad for the folks where you've been living here, not getting in any trouble, staying on the radar, minding your own business. But at the same time, you still, the whole factor matters. It's like when you're dealing with a child. At the end of the day, if they did something wrong, regardless of what they did, the fact is you still did something wrong. And you got to be held accountable for it. That's just the way life is. You do something wrong, you got to be held accountable for it. Why should you get a pass for doing something wrong? Because, well, I did this wrong, but I got here and I did X, Y, and Z stuff good. Yeah, good on you. But at the same time, it's like, it's still wrong, right? You still came in wrong. You still did something wrong, which is what the point is and what people are focusing, what people tend to focus on when you talk about the whole situation going on ICE. Now, people get kids and stuff getting separated and not being able to see families. Obviously, that stuff's not cool. That's not right. That's not giving a pass to that. But understanding the fact that if somebody did something wrong, that's like you go commit a crime, for example, right? You go rob a store at gunpoint or whatever. After you rob that store at gunpoint, you living, you upstanding citizen, not doing anything, never got caught for the crime, living an upstanding life, living okay, cool. Then all of a sudden, say it was a cold case, they couldn't figure out who did it, whatever. Now they found out that you did it. Okay, but you've done well for yourself, set all this stuff up or whatever. Should you get a pass? You still did something wrong. You still did something illegal. You got to get held accountable for it, right? That's how the justice system works. Now, a lot of times people say justice system is unfair. It is. It's not a perfect system. We all know that none of the stuff in the world is perfect because none of us are perfect. There's only one person that's perfect, and that's the man upstairs, right? So if you're looking at that and looking at situations like that, it's like, come on, man, like you are coming in and then people are jumping up and down and saying like, F. This is the thing that trips me out about this, which is really why I got on this topic. The fact that you see so many people from all these different places or whatever, and they're like, F America, America isn't great, and all the stuff that they talk. So I'm like, if it's that bad, why do you want to be here? If it's that messed up, why are you so pressed to come here? Why not stay where you're from? Stay where you're at. And people will get pissed off and say, oh man, that's a messed up monster. It's really not. Because you don't see, like, I live in America. You don't see me running around saying, hey man, look, I want to leave America, go live over here. I'm cool. I see how stuff go over there. I see how stuff be jumping off in other spots. I'm cool. Stay my butt right here. Now, that's not saying here in America we don't have our issues and our struggles, because we do. We're not a perfect country. We have a lot of divide and stuff like that. And then some stuff that people divide on that they just can't come back and meet in the middle and sit down and have a conversation about. But at the same time, it's like, come on, dude, like you can't, that don't jive. Like that concept don't make sense. It don't vibe. It don't flow. So if it's not flowing, it's like you can't tell me that I need to assimilate to somebody else's culture that's not from here, and you're going to tell me to screw, like, pretty much to tell me about my culture and what I believe and what my standing is. I have to push that to the side because I have to be sensitive to what you have going on, but you're not going to do the same in return. That's not a fair exchange. That's somebody getting more than the other person when things are supposed to be 50-50 and equal split down the middle. You want to come to a country that's not oppressing you, that's not stopping you from doing stuff, but then you get here and then you get these people that jump up like this, like I said, this person from UCLA, talking about some of these people are oppressing and doing this and third, and it's like that's not what they're doing. Pull the information, look at the numbers, and look at it. But nobody does that with anything from a political standpoint or whatever. And it's like everybody trips out about President Trump, and I'm like, this dude get more flack. Like if a wind blows the wrong way, got something to do with President Trump, and it's like, dad, dude, y'all got that much hate for a dude? But everybody was cool when he was doing The Apprentice. You fired. Everybody was cool. But then it's like, if you look at the history, and this is both sides, politics, Republicans and Democrats. You look at the political scope and look at how things roll, and then you'll see a city where it's predominantly been run by Democrats, right? Stuff's all jacked up. You still gonna blame the Republicans for it? How? Y'all been everybody y'all voted in that's been there for X, Y, and Z time period has been Democrat. And vice versa, same thing with the Republican Party in certain spots. So I'm like, if you're sitting there and everybody's like, oh man, you got to vote this and third. Like, I was like, how about you make a decision? I voted Republican at times and I voted Democrat at times. It's all about when you look at it and you break down the scope, you look at people's policies, look at people's history of the positions that they've held in their political career. That should be what you look at and what they're trying to push for you to make a decision on who you're voting for, whether you vote for Republican or vote for a Democrat. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to break stuff down from that standpoint, like I keep saying, like I say it to them blue in the face, do your research, pull your information. A lot of times people will vote a certain way or roll a certain place or roll with a certain mindset, roll with a certain thought process because that's all they've known. They don't know anything different. They've never seen anything different. So if that's the case, you might want to make some moves, man. You might want to make some changes. Get more information. Find out exactly what's going on. And I say this to close this out. My thought process is, this is America. Land of the free, home of the brave. There are a lot of things in America that we have that we got built off the backs of people that have sacrificed, blood, sweat, and tears, sacrificed their lives, dealt with all kinds of things to get the country to the point where it is, where we have these freedoms. And people talk like America is so bad, but I'm telling you, like, this is the one country where you can come in with nothing and go from nothing to the ultimate success. Now, I also believe that people achieving success through whatever God has set forth for them and whatever their path of life is. We don't do anything or get anywhere in this life without, the Lord Almighty giving us his hominis dominus about, how you're doing, how you're living your life, and that trajectory that they have for the Holy Spirit to guide you through. But if you're looking at that, you got to, like, people come in here and it's like, you're not from here, or you come into another country and you want to bash and denigrate it. That just don't sit well with me. So it's like, if you want people to be sensitive to what your feelings are, what your struggles are, you want people to give you your just due and give you your respect, do the same thing. Respect the country that you're in. Acknowledge the place that you're in. Acknowledge the opportunities that you have in the country, because the reason that you came to this country was for that reason. So don't come in and then do the things you do or say the negative things that you say, talk about killing Americans, calling us imbeciles and all this other stuff, when it's like people push back on you for it, then you're upset. You're being oppressed. How? You're not willing to change, not fully, slightly, to fit into the country that you're moving into. You want to come in and tell the country that, no, I don't need to fit you. You need to fit me. That's like somebody moving into your house. That's like you let somebody in your house. You have rules and regulations in your house. That's like somebody walking in your house and they just kicking their feet up on your table, knocking stuff over, going in your fridge, taking doing what they want to do. You're not gonna let that fly in your house. So why should you let that fly when people come into your country? I'm just saying. I'll catch you folks on the next go around. Make sure you like, listen, and subscribe. My goal is to keep bringing these out to you, keep popping some videos out, keep popping the podcast going, and engage, interact, comment. You know, leave your comments. Let's have some good open talks about this. This is not conversation for people to bash each other or kick each other down. Give a clear viewpoint. Have a good conversation. I'll catch you folks on the next one, man.